Hey everybody, it's Babbling Purple, and I'm here to babble about yet another documentary that I watched. I don't know if y'all can tell, my last two videos, I love a good documentary. This one is older, but I just had never seen it before. And since I'm looking at documentaries all the time and talking to people openly about the documentaries that I've seen, TikTok has decided to fill my algorithm with nothing but people who are recommending even more documentaries to me. I'm in heaven. But this documentary obviously was a little deeper and a little tougher to get through. Is a six-part docu-series called The Trials of Gabriel Fernandez. Now, do you know who that is or why he has a whole documentary done about him? The Cliff's Note version is that he was an 8-year-old who was starved, abused, and essentially to uh to beaten to the point where he's unalived by his mother and the mother's boyfriend. And so the trial obviously looks at the actual crime. It looks at the months of abuse that led up to this. It looks at um, the Department of Child and Family Services in LA and what they did or didn't do. It looks at, from a jury perspective, the toll that it takes and the immense responsibility it takes to not only decide if someone's guilty or not guilty. What I didn't know, and I don't know if this varies state by state. If you guys know, please let me know in the comments. That they also get to decide whether these people get the death penalty or life in jail. I didn't realize they determined the sentencing. I thought that was just a judge, but getting ahead of myself. So you guys know that I write notes, see, because I don't want to forget things. So these are just some things that stood out to me, right? So number one was the jury, and I said, I already said this before, as a heavy lift deciding the verdict and the sentencing. Like they had some of the jurors interviewed in the documentary, and I can't imagine the responsibility that you have to do that and how I'm sure something like that kind of keeps you up at night. But also, and I've seen this in trials before. I mean, obviously it's fictional trials, but there's several times where they may hear something. Because the thing is, the trial is just about what actually led up to his death. Never mind that there were 8 months of abusive behavior leading up to the death. They kind of focus on just the death itself. So a lot of times they're told, okay, guys, strike that. We're going to strike this from the record. Jury, forget you heard that. And I'm like, how can you forget anything that you heard? Like, I don't know how you can hear things come about in a trial, things that, again, may not necessarily pertain directly to the case, or things you're told to just kind of dismiss, how you are able to just kind of take it out of your head as opposed to thinking about it when you're thinking about the sentencing, you're thinking about the verdict. Like, I don't know if I could necessarily do that, which is probably why I haven't been called, but it's just, I don't know. And they obviously took their job very seriously, but I just don't know if I'd be able to just forget certain things. I feel like everything would just kind of fall into place for me. I also think I'd be quick to judge someone and decide if they're guilty or not guilty without giving it, I won't say too much thought, but I don't know. I don't know how to react, but that was my first thing. Second thing was the defense attorney. Now, if you guys watch Law and Order SVU, or it's in any episode of any cop show, when they arrest a person, they give them the Miranda rights, right? And one of the Miranda rights is you have the right to an attorney. If you can't afford one, one will be appointed for you, right? So I get that in theory, but if I'm the defense attorney or if I'm a defense attorney, I feel like that also has to be a very thankless job. Because yes, this person has a right to an attorney. They have the right to have someone represent them in court to argue for their best interests. I understand that right, and I'm not saying take that right away from them. But as the attorney, how can you willingly represent someone that you probably know in your heart of hearts has done these heinous things? Like, I don't get that part. And I heard somewhere that for some defense attorneys, it's not that they're trying to prove that their client is innocent, they're trying to put doubt in the minds of the juror. Or in this particular case, for like the boyfriend, they're trying to argue that it was second degree murder as opposed to first degree murder, right? And I just don't understand how you can have, also, I'm saying you can have a heart because I know people get on lawyers a lot. You got to do your job at the end of the day. And I get that. But I don't know if I could do that. If I know without a shadow of doubt that you're guilty of unaliving this 8-year-old innocent child, I don't see how I can possibly represent you in that. Like I don't get it. And you had a whole team. I don't know. Again, it's probably why I wasn't called to do that because that just would not be for me. The second thing is motherhood slash phobic. So with Gabriel, when he was first born, his mother was like, I don't want to get him away from me. So he was raised for the first 2 years of his life by his uncle and the uncle's partner, right? Two gay men. He was happy, he was thriving, everything was great. But then the grandparents intervened because the grandfather didn't want his grandson being raised by two homosexuals. So the grandparents took him in for like a year. They couldn't handle it because they're probably older and they don't want to take care of like a child. So that's when he went to his mother and the mother's boyfriend. So all of this stemmed from grandparents being homophobic, and then the mother's boyfriend apparently was homophobic as well, and maybe the mother as well, that they would call him gay all the time, and that's supposed to be what led to all the abuse. It was almost like trying to beat the gay out of him. Now again, this is the 8-year-old boy, so how do you even really know? One, two, you hate gay people that bad that you're gonna take the life of an 8-year-old child who doesn't know anything. I won't say doesn't know anything, so maybe I shouldn't speak. I'm gonna assume doesn't really know much about what sexuality is. He is coloring, he is going to school, he's playing with his friends. He's just trying to be a normal quote unquote boy. Finally with his mother, probably all those years without his mother, he probably wondered how come she doesn't want me. Where is she? And now you're back with her, and this is taking place for the 8 months that you were with her. This is what happens. And I just, and it's not like this. I'm also not naive to think that homophobia does not exist. Obviously, clearly, even in 2026, I know it exists. We see and hear stories all the time. So I understand that. But if that's the case, that you think this child is gay and, oh, I don't want to have anything to do with it, blah, 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 then why keep him? At any given time, you could have given him back to the grandparents, given him to some other family member if you're like, I don't even want that in my house. Because the mother had two other kids. She had an older son and an older daughter, Gabriel's two older siblings. At any time, you could have just sent Gabriel away. You had that as an option. So why didn't you take that as an option? And then the other question is that people were asking in the documentary, would this have happened if one of the people were not there? Meaning, would this have happened if it had just been the man there? Would this have happened if just been his mom there? Because the mother was there for the abuse and she contributed to the abuse. She like hit him with a baseball bat, they punched him in the face, they fed him kitty litter, they locked him up in a cupboard, like they did all of this stuff together. But the mortal wounds came from the boyfriend. But that's kind of a question that wasn't really answered. Like if the boyfriend wasn't in the picture, would Gabriel still be alive? Was she tempted or was she like coerced by the boyfriend to beat the gay out of him? Like we don't really know because no one's really gonna say. Like we have no idea, right? But also from a motherhood standpoint, and I say this with all honesty, with me being a mother and loving being a mommy, every woman is not meant to be a mother. And I think society tells us that we're supposed to procreate, we're supposed to get married, have all the children, blah, blah, blah. And I've said this plenty of times to people. Yes, I'm a mother and I absolutely love my role as a mother, but I know for a fact that it's not for everybody. And I feel like more women need to be honest with themselves about that and decide for themselves, you know what? I don't think I can be a mom. Let me not do it. Or in her case, you have two other children, and it doesn't seem like the two other children have been abused. It seems like they're quote unquote fine kids, aside from all the abuse that they witnessed of their little brother. They weren't abused. So if you're like, okay, cool, this is what I got, I'm cool with this, then stop having kids. Or again, you had the kid, you gave the kid away initially because you're like, oh, I just can't do this. Oh, it's a baby. Then don't take the kid back. Why do that? You knew from the very beginning she gave Gabriel up, I want to say when he was maybe a couple months old, to her uncle to raise. So if you knew in the first couple months that this isn't for you, then why even take him back? What was the point of that? And, this also goes to, and I'm sure, we all know this. If you're a single parent, whether you're a man or a woman, be careful with who you bring around your kids. Like, it doesn't always turn into this particular situation. Clearly, this is a very extreme case, but definitely be careful about who you bring around your kids because as the mother, she was supposed to be the one protecting him. She was supposed to be the one telling her boyfriend, "Hey, don't harm him, don't put your hands on him." But again, she put her hands on him too, so she wasn't clearly all there either. And it's just a terrible situation all the way around. Like it just really is. The other thing is, let me make sure that I answered all my own questions. Yes, other thing is two things can be true. So the defense attorney, they brought a woman, two people actually, who used to work with the boyfriend. He used to be a driver at a like a retirement village, like an old folks home. He's also helped clean up the residents, like, who wore diapers. And they're like, he was just so nice and he was a good guy. And we loved him. Like he was great there. And of course, the prosecutor is like, okay, so do you think a great guy, I was like, you still think he's a great guy, knowing that he admitted to beating this little boy in the face 10 times or to punching him in his body 20 times? And the woman's like, I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. Obviously, I don't condone anything that he did, but that doesn't take away from the nice guy that I saw when I worked with him. And I'm sure other people may be like, girl, this ain't time for this or whatever. But they brought her in there for that reason as the defense attorney to show that he's not all quote unquote bad. Now, I'll say this, and I've been saying this a lot. I think this has been my mantra for 2026, that two things can absolutely be true at the same time. He could have been a great employee. He could have been great with those residents. He could have been a good friend. But being good in some areas of your life and in some roles that you hold in your life doesn't mean that you're blanket going to be good in everything else. Like I talk to my mother about this sometimes because I have a little brother. My brother is a very raggedy brother. He's not a great brother to me. He doesn't, I'm not gonna go through all the stuff he does or doesn't do, but he's a raggedy brother. However, I can't say he's a raggedy son. I can't say he's a raggedy friend. I can't say he's a raggedy whatever else because he doesn't occupy those roles in my life. He's not my son. He's not my friend. So I don't know if he's great in those roles. He absolutely may be. And that doesn't take away from him being raggedy in this particular area. And the same thing with the boyfriend. He could have been a great employee, but that doesn't mean that he couldn't still be an abuser to this little boy. That doesn't mean he can't still be homophobic. That doesn't mean he can't still be possibly a manipulator. All that stuff can still be true while he was a good employee and good to these people. So I understood why they brought her on the stand. I felt bad for her because I know it's the job of the prosecutor to kind of dissect her thing, what she's saying, to make her kind of second guess what she's saying. But she was right. She was like, I'm not saying what he did was good at all, but I am saying that when I knew him, he was a good guy. And kind of left it at that. And I appreciated that. And this is my last thing. The social workers. They had a whole episode about social workers where they actually showed a woman doing a home visit. And they had phone calls between the social worker and the mother, and how whenever they asked questions about Gabriel and his well-being, they didn't ask Gabriel himself, they asked the mother. And if she's contributing to the abuse, of course she's not necessarily going to tell the truth. And then they show the police interviews with his older siblings. They blur their face. And they say, when this happened the night that he died, mommy told us, hey, when CPS or the police come, make sure you tell them that you guys were playing and he fell. So they're already being brought up to lie to people of authority, which means they probably have been taught to lie to Child and Family Services as well. This is my thing. There was a trial against four of the social workers, basically claimed like you guys didn't do your job. There were lots of calls to that house. There were complaints from the teacher, from all these other people who noticed that he had a black eye, who noticed he had patches of hair missing, who noticed scars all over his face and burns on his body and all this stuff. And so, of course, someone needs to be punished in this case, which I understand. But from a social work perspective, not being in that field, maybe if you guys, you're a social worker and you're watching my channel, watching this video, if you're familiar with this case of Gabriel Hernandez, maybe you can explain to me in the comments how this works. Because I'm assuming, without being in the field, I'm going to assume that there are limitations to what you all can do. I'm assuming you can see a situation and make a recommendation, but at the end of the day, you don't have any control over whether or not your recommendation is taken seriously or not. You have someone to report to as well, which I get. So I am curious if you guys can comment below if you're familiar with that case, of course. What are your limitations? If you're familiar with the case, did they do everything they were supposed to do? Do you think that they were lacking in some way? It makes you think that they're lacking in some way because apparently, after the verdict was read, the boyfriend got the death penalty, the mother got life without parole. I think a couple weeks after their sentencing, another 7-year-old boy who lived in the same neighborhood as Gabriel had the same similar situation where he was unalived by the mother and the mother's boyfriend. And they talk about all these other cases, and of course, it's pointing directly to the Department of Child and Family Services of LA. So I'm not saying they're corrupt. They could have thousands upon thousands of cases and not enough people who work there. I don't know what the situation is, and I'm not trying to make excuses, but I'm just curious about what exactly social workers are responsible for when it comes to a case like this. So overall, it is long because it's only just 6 episodes in this docuseries, but it is a very, very well done documentary. I think it covers every angle. Obviously, it's very sad and heart wrenching to hear what this little boy went through, this innocent 8-year-old little boy. I keep emphasizing 8-year-old because 8 is such, you're in third grade, you're minding your business, you're kind of learning about who you are, but you don't really know who you are because you're just 8, you're not even double digits yet. And the fact that he suffered at the hands of his mother, a woman was supposed to protect and love him, it's just, I feel for him. Obviously feel for his siblings who had to witness all of that, and they have to keep that in the back of their mind that they, I'm sure they have survivor's guilt, like why was he targeted and how come we weren't targeted, and I wish we had been big enough to stop, him, to stop our mom, and I'm sure there's a lot of conflicting feelings there too. But yeah, overall, I thought it was a good documentary. Just good in the way that it was shot, and in the way that they tackle so many different issues, and I thought it was very well rounded and well done. So that is my recap, my review. Watch at your own risk because I know some people are squeamish when it comes to certain topics. It is very heavy, but I do recommend. So thank you guys for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you guys soon. Peace.